I like to look at it from an individual artist point of view, and how many artists can I help and how many lives can I change, and then think about that having a ripple effect and spreading.
We're currently preparing our special 50th episode of Going Conscious, which is launching next week. Please send me any last questions you might have that you'd like me to answer in the episode. If you'd like to, you can send them to me on Instagram at Nikki Trott, and you may be featured. I'd love to hear from you. So back to this episode. Harriet is the founder of the artist network and podcast Girls to the Front, a platform to connect and educate artists that identify as women. She is also the founder and host of music platform Secret Sessions. What started as a YouTube channel has grown into one of the UK's most well-respected live shows and music brands. Harriet has worked with hundreds of influential artists and creators, from acts including Ed Sheeran, Passenger, and Bastille, to Kacey, Musgraves, Mahalia, and Freya writings. In this episode, we talk about why Harriet decided to champion women, the consciousness of your mission, and the first Secret Sessions festival happening this September.
You're listening to Going Conscious, the podcast where we discover new ways to live a more conscious life of fulfillment and freedom. Each week, I speak with entrepreneurs, academics, and changemakers who have made big transformations, left unfulfilling lives behind, and found meaning in this new world where purpose drives success. Let's get inspired to live our unique journeys to the fullest. Let's explore the impact we want to make and deepen our understanding of ourselves, each other, and this beautiful world around us. Live your freedom. I'm your host, Nikki Trott.
In this episode, we talk about the experience it takes to get to know what you deeply care about, the diversity issues in the music industry, and Harriet's holistic approach to making a difference, mental health issues for artists, from how social media tech companies create addiction, freedom, the importance of connection, the illusion of time, and the lessons we might learn from our children who are arriving soon. Now let's get to our conversation. Harriet, hello and welcome to Going Conscious.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me. I'm excited to speak to you today about how you help female musicians to really get the income they deserve. And I know you have founded Secret Sessions, which is one of the UK's most well-respected live shows, and you've been working in Secret Sessions for a while, and that then you've pivoted more recently to also really supporting female artists. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey for you and what led you to make this shift.
Yes, the story. All right, so I started Secret Sessions around 10 years ago, and it started as a YouTube channel. So I was a filmmaker, and I'd recently graduated from St Martin's in London, and I guess a lot of my peers at uni I was on a fine art course, so everybody was kind of dreaming of white walls and gallery spaces, whereas I was really interested in getting right to, the heart of the normal person. And YouTube had just come about, so it was around 2007 that I graduated. So YouTube was just starting to be a thing, and I was like, I really like this. I really love the idea of being able to kind of get right to the audience. So I started making videos and putting them on YouTube, and it was essentially me and my video camera on my back, just going around London, filming these artists and building a channel around it. And then some of these artists became, Bastille and Kacey Musgraves and Lumineers and Passenger, and, got famous, which helped the channel to grow. And we built a lovely little community around Secret Sessions and, presenters and cameramen. And it was just a lot of fun in my early 20s. And then I guess I came a little bit disenfranchised with the YouTube space, and it became very much about kind of cover songs and webcams and influencers. And to me, it was losing the sort of heart of music, which was one of the reasons that I got into it. So we took it to a live event. So again, that was with a real focus on audiences and how we could get right. It was very much about connection, so how we can use music to connect audiences. So for the next 5 years, we were at the Hospital Club in central London doing a monthly show. We did bi-monthly shows at Soho Farmhouse. And just, my life was just about putting on these live music events. And then COVID happened, and, suddenly I had a lot of time and everything was very different, and I was able to kind of reflect on everything. And something that had always bugged me about the industry is that I knew that there was a real gender bias in like there is in a lot of industries, but I felt it a lot. And when those festival lineups started to come out and people were, I don't know if you saw them, but like on Twitter, people were like scrubbing out every man's name, and there were like 3 people left on the lineup. So it really sort of showed the general conscious what was actually happening in the industry. So I decided to retrospectively go back over all of our shows that we'd done and look at what our balance was. And we actually had a 60% female lineup. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting, and started to think, because most shows would probably be like 10% or 20%. Record labels sign 20% of women. So that gives you an idea of the actual balance. So I decided to start kind of leading with that a little bit and actually making it more of a mission-led approach, and ended up sectioning off an element of the company and calling it Girls to the Front, which harks back to Riot Girl days. And it was something that Kathleen Hanna used to say. She used to shout "Girls to the Front" at punk gigs. So it meant that, women first at the front to mosh, which I really like, but I'm not like a punk follower really at all, but I just really like that concept. So Girls to the Front was born. At the beginning, it was all about just keeping people connected during a really difficult time for the industry and a really difficult time for creatives. So we'd meet twice a week on Zoom. So once would be like a kind of crit where people could bring their work and get feedback and connect with each other. And the other one would be an industry-led talk. So someone would come from Spotify or Google and talk to the women in the group. And that was really amazing, because it was the first time that I got to see artists kind of interacting and working together. And something that was very interesting about that was that a lot of them hadn't really been in that situation before. And some of them were saying, I've just realized I've never actually worked with another woman in the music industry, which kind of blew my mind a bit. So I decided to focus exclusively on that for the last year and a half. And now we're just starting to come back out of everything here. And we've planned a Secret Sessions festival that's going to be happening this September. And Girls to the Front will be programming one of the main stages. So it's all kind of come into this sort of nice circle ecosystem has fit together. And I guess, it's all just come together very recently in a nice way. So that's kind of where we're at. I hope that's a good summary of the last few years.
Yes, thank you so much. It's amazing. I really love how you've brought this mission, and I love Girls to the Front as well. I didn't know where the name had come from. It's very cool, and it does sound like everything's really fitting together really beautifully for you. And I'm wondering, as you have brought this mission of really supporting women and helping women to support each other as well in the music industry, as you've brought this more and more to the front, although we've heard that it's always been there to some degree, how's that changed what your business is like for you personally?
I think, topical, given the name of this podcast, but I think it's kind of a consciousness and an awareness that it's brought more than anything. I'm not under the illusion that I, on my own, can actually change anything from, in this short amount of time from an industry point of view. But I think I like to look at it from an individual artist point of view, and how many artists can I help, and how many lives can I change, and then think about that having a ripple effect and spreading. In terms of how I work or run my business, I think I've had some moments of reflection around the conversations or situations that I've been in the last few years, particularly with, very male dominated industries. Like, I've done a couple of rounds of investment, and I think I reflect a lot more. I think I went in very blind at the beginning and, just maybe naive a little bit, and didn't really know that some of the ways that I was talked to or treated were probably quite bad. I think being a little bit older, having a bit more awareness, having a bit more confidence, and also having done more work in this area, I think it's mostly about kind of reflection and how to move forward from here, and what kind of business do I want. The really nice thing about Girls to the Front is that I've started it 10 years later, and when you've had a business for 10 years, it can be quite difficult to change things. Whereas starting something new on your own terms, like no one owns any of this company, no one probably ever will. Everything's up to me. It's all on my own terms. Has been really, really refreshing.
Amazing. Yeah. So you're really able to just bring that mission to the world in whatever way you see fit, and do that in a complementary way to your existing business, but with a clean slate.
Yeah, exactly. And that's not to say that I have I haven't really had bad experiences in the way that I might have suggested within secret sessions, but there's something about starting fresh as someone in their mid-30s as opposed to someone in their early 20s, and being able to just operate in a way that I think is aware and conscious and useful, as opposed to what I previously did, which was probably a little bit of, I don't know if it wasn't conscious, but I certainly wasn't thinking about the same things that I think about now in terms of what the mission is and what I want the business to be there for.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it takes our own personal experience, doesn't it, of really getting to know what our values are and what we care about more, to be able to then wrap those into our business. It's not something you can just switch on the second you leave university. It's much more about discovering that mission for yourself and then finding a way to bring that into the business in the right time.
Yeah, and I think it really does take time and experience to know what you care about. I think some people are lucky and they've always had this sort of one thing that they've always wanted to do and nothing else matters. But, for me, I've always been quite kind of multi-passionate, I guess. And, there's certain things that I wanted to do that I wasn't able to do long term. And I just kind of had to really sort of find my way. And having a business was the way that I found my way. So it was kind of a lot of trial and error and just seeing what stuck. And now, 10 years later, post, not even post pandemic, but post lockdown, touch wood, what could have been, a real deal breaker, closing this business, actually turned it into something entirely different and better, I think.
Yes. And I'd love to hear from your perspective. There are many things that I might be able to guess or that I might know, but I'd love to hear from you as an expert. Why don't women in the music industry get paid enough?
So, there's a lot of reasons. The way that I have decided that I talk about it is that there's problems at the top and problems at the bottom that span to meet in the middle. So there's a thread of problems the whole way through. I think the problems at the top are the key decision makers. What runs parallel to the artist problem is the problem of the corporate side of the music industry. There's a lot of people working hard to fix that as well. There's far less men in positions of power, far less women in positions of power in the music industry. There's a lot of misogyny and, like there are in many industries, but it's particularly rife in music. So the key decision makers at labels and production companies and people pulling the purse strings are going to be mostly male, pale and stale, as people say. And that filters down. So that's kind of the top side. And at the bottom of the industry is the fans, I would say. And the fans aren't, if you think about who gets marketed to fans, it's the people that the labels sign and they put huge marketing budgets behind. The labels aren't signing as many women, which means the women aren't getting global marketing campaigns put behind them. Therefore, they're not seen by audiences. Therefore, audiences don't buy their music. Therefore, labels say that audiences don't like women as much when it comes to musicians. There's other reasons why labels don't find as many women, things like, you can stick Ed Sheeran and his acoustic guitar and some ripped jeans and a t-shirt on a stage and, hundreds of millions of people will buy tickets, whereas Dua Lipa requires 17 dancers, a glam squad and everything else. And, that's a lot more expensive. But I think overall, the biggest problem is this kind of vicious circle of them not being signed, them not getting marketed, therefore fans not buying their music, and it just carrying on and carrying on.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes so much sense. And of course, I know about the decision makers, but I hadn't seen this vicious cycle before. And that's really, really interesting about how, obviously then these male, pale, stale people at the top of the corporates aren't marketing female music, and then audience don't buy female music. And I can see how that just feeds the same. So interesting, very interesting. And so,
yeah.
How are you helping then? We'd love to hear a bit more about the approach that you've developed with Girls to the Front to help some of these female artists.
Yeah, so on a kind of ground level, there is support for women and non-binary talent. So whether that's, helping them get on the stage at the festival that we're running, or pushing opportunity towards them, or we do a podcast that hit number 2 in the Apple charts, which was really nice. So just putting out a lot of information and a lot of content. So that's the sort of ground level. And then up from there, we just are about to launch an artist academy. So I've been working in the background with 10 to 15 artists on a one-to-one basis in order to really learn what it is that artists need. And we've put that into a course that artists can sign up for that will take them from, because one of the other problems is that 20 years ago, a talented artist would be snapped up at this stage because labels knew that they could go and print a load of CDs and records and they'd get bought and they'd make money from them. Whereas nowadays, because of the digital industry and the commoditization of music, you don't get signed early on. So there's this kind of gap between knowing that you have talent, starting to build a little bit of audience, and then getting any backing. And it's that gap that this course looks to serve. So it's all about development around, there's social media, there's releasing, there's all that music industry stuff, but there's also a lot around actually being a woman and how do you deal with your mindset and how do you deal with the gender narrative and how do you deal with imposter syndrome and all of those things. So yeah, that's been packaged up into a course. And yeah, also working alongside bigger companies to program things, like the Secret Sessions Festival will have a stage running the whole weekend that is specifically Girls to the Front and only featuring female and gender minority artists.
Amazing. Wow. I love the sound of it. And I love how you've brought together this holistic approach from how to release all the way through to, dealing with imposter syndrome. And that's so aligned with my approach too, which we've talked about in the past, and how I support women and enlightened men. but most of my clients are also women. And I also bring together, for conscious entrepreneurs, this holistic approach. Imposter syndrome as well is one of the key topics that we deal with. And we deal with other things around releasing fears and limiting beliefs and building self-love and lots of really deep work. And then we go into the alignment with purpose and values and mission. And then we build out the brand and business strategies, the stuff that needs to be taken action on to really make an impact, like in yours, the releasing and all the other things and the social media that you help your clients to develop. And it's so interesting to hear how you've also found that this kind of combination really is what people need. And I think as women who are leading our work, whether you're an artist or an entrepreneur or whatever it is that you're doing, when you're really creating your output in the world, it comes from you, it comes from your inside. And it's been so typical to split these things out and to have any internal development so separate and to jump straight to the output and the action. Mm-hmm. And I hear often from clients who come on my course that when they join, they're kind of impatient to just get to the last bit and get the business plan and get the new brand and ideas and run with it. But the program really kind of forces them to take a little bit of a grace period at the beginning to actually go deeper and find out, where is this all coming from, and what is it that I'm blocking myself from, and how can I release that so that I can, flow in a completely new way to a completely different level. And then of course they reap all the rewards later. And I love hearing that you have come to this kind of holistic approach as well. Would love to hear a bit more about it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's unavoidable when you're working with human beings in this day and age. I mean, it shouldn't even be about this day and age. It should have been, it should be a part of any sort of program or any, I wish labels did more of this kind of work. Like anybody picking up a young woman or man should have some kind of holistic approach. I think the other thread that runs concurrently to the gender narrative that we're talking about is the mental health within the music industry, which, again, this is just typical of many industries, but in this case, we're talking about the music industry. But, not being able to support artists with, I think a lot of it comes down to the visibility that they need to portray in order to be successful. So if you even think about, as a woman that is on social media and relatively active, like the things that come with having to be that visible are a real mindfuck, basically, because all of that imposter syndrome, all of that kind of confidence, all of that feelings of unworthiness and discontentness can often be 50 or 60% fixed if you just put your phone away and never look at it again. And if you then want to be an artist, which is all about building a fan base, being visible and being an icon, then all of that is amplified. And to think that you can just teach artists to put music out and build a fan base without looking at that, I think is really naive. And that's why so many artists end up with such bad mental health issues, in my opinion.
Yeah. And that must be something which has changed so much with social media. Of course, there was always attention on artists and icons, but in a very different way. And now, like you say, it's really always on. It's there's no hiding away, and it's what you have to do to have a fan base as an artist. And I wonder how different that must be for women because of the standards that society is judging women against compared to men, where women are being compared much more for the way they look, for the way they dress, for the way they present themselves, and feeling much more pressure in that area, when really, as an artist, that doesn't need to have anything to do with it. They're not trying to be Naomi Campbell. So how does it affect women in that way then, with the way that we treat and judge women on social media?
Yeah, I mean, that again is just so sort of inherent, and I do think it is changing, and there's positive move towards making this better, but it's so ingrained in the kind of selfie generation, and there's certain big businesses that run the digital space that aren't necessarily taking the right measures that everyone else is. So it's like, on a micro level, we're all trying to do our best, but on a macro level, like the people that actually run these companies aren't actually being that helpful by providing like filters that make you look like you've had plastic surgery and things like that. So yes, on the one hand, people are preferring the realness of things like TikTok and, hashtag no filter. But actually, on the flip side, there's so many, there's so many different technology companies trying to push against it and trying to use what is essentially gambling tools to make us addicted to these platforms still. So it's a real battle, I think, and it's something that every one of us will have struggled with at some point, and to a degree probably still do. And the thing that I find with artists is it's just it's the checking of the phone that's difficult. So we'll put a lot of things into place around, trying to only spend a certain amount of time a day, or planning your post so that you say what you want to say and then you don't look again. But it's this sort of dopamine hit of picking up your phone to check and then end up scrolling. And all you're ever checking for is verification. Have people liked it? Have people messaged to say they like my single or my picture? So it's that needs to somehow be broken. And I do think that the big business of these social networks need to play a part in not being allowed to use such kind of manipulative tools around how we use these platforms.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you enjoy Going Conscious, please subscribe for a new episode every Wednesday. If you think your friends and networks would benefit from listening, please share this podcast of fulfillment and freedom with them. And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review. It's great to read what you think, and your support makes a big difference. Together, let's grow our courage and tools to transform and live the lives we really want to. As well as creating Going Conscious, I work as a transformation coach and conscious brand consultant. I'm on a mission to help holistically maximize conscious entrepreneurs to drive positive changes for themselves, others, and the planet. I can help you to transition and level up personally, and I can help your brand grow and make a bigger impact. To connect with me and find out more about how we can work together, find me on Instagram @NikkiTrott or on my website nikkitrott.com. Please get in touch. I'd love to hear from you, and let's talk about your path of growth and development.
And so how can artists or anyone who needs to be visible or wants to be visible, how can they build their fan base in a more healthy way using these tools?
Yeah, so one thing that I teach a lot of is helping artists to see the merits of looking at engagement as opposed to followers. So we're all in this battle for numbers, and one of the big issues in a lot of these industries is everyone's thinking about the millions instead of the hundreds or even the ones. Like, we're trying to grow these massive numbers that don't really mean anything, where I talk a lot about the 1,000 fans model. So instead of trying to get 1 million people to pay you a fraction of a penny to listen to your track, what about if you got a lot less people to pay you more money to do something that's much more engaged? So if you had 1,000 people that spent £100 on you a year, whether that's a couple of bits of merch, a ticket to a live show, that's £100,000 income. And all you're looking at is 1,000 people. So trying to get artists to use it as a way to connect with people as opposed to just build numbers. And the way that you do that is by not broadcasting, but having conversations. So instead of, it's a little bit like if you went to the school disco and stood on the stage and shouted, "Who wants to be my girlfriend?" who wants to be my boyfriend? No one would reply. Whereas what you actually do when you're courting people is you go and you have a conversation with them and you look into their eyes and you make them feel seen. And it should be exactly the same on social media when you're building a fan base. Instead of just every so often going, buy my single, buy my album, actually going on and saying, hey, I've just released this. What did you think? I'd love it if you could listen. Hey, have you got anything that you're releasing? I'd like to listen to that too. Hey, what did you do today? And actually trying to have these conversations so it feels like more of a worthy place to be instead of what it's previously been, where people are just kind of shouting into the void and hoping that they get noticed.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's really from empty numbers to community, which is the point. And someone said that
exactly.
on a podcast episode recently, Naomi, who's a podcaster who promotes women's voices in podcasting. And she said, people get so obsessed with the numbers and get really disappointed if they maybe just have 100 people listening to each episode, not 1,000 or 10,000, but imagine a room with 100 people listening to you for an hour every week.
Yeah, exactly.
And how incredible is that? And I love that reframing as well. I love the way you've reframed it and the way she did too. It just reminded me of that because it's so true. You can get so obsessed with these massive numbers that just mean nothing, and you forget that the numbers even relate to people, and actually just building those meaningful connections, which we only have so much capacity to do anyway, can bring so much more joy to you and results to your business as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so easy to slip out of thinking like that. And I just think, think of the one and not the many. And actually, if you get through a whole year and you meet 3 new people a day, that's 1,000 fans. And that's ultimately what we're looking for. And when I work with artists, I'll literally get them to make a spreadsheet of these people that they're connecting with. If you think of the big artists and how it's worked, like Ed Sheeran, for example, he literally played every single independent venue, probably in the UK, maybe twice. Just went round, him and his guitar, playing his music for people, meeting people for maybe 10 years. Whereas people think that these artists just come out of nowhere. But the majority of people that make it, it's because they have done this sort of one fan at a time approach, and then that's had a compounded effect and it's grown to big numbers. But the sort of overnight success that people think happens in the music industry is rarely actually the case. And when it does happen, it doesn't last long.
Yeah, such a good reminder, and I think applicable to so many industries. And I wanted to ask you about diversity in general as well. How is diversity improving, if at all, in the music industry, and what can we do about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to sort of look at intersectionality when we look at the gender narrative, because everything is so kind of closely aligned. And I often find that, now that this is something I talk a lot more about, I'll often be on a panel with people from other kind of campaigners around different minorities within the industry. So I'm like learning a hell of a lot of that I didn't know about. And in some ways, I'm relatively naive on these subjects. But I think, the music industry is seen to be a diverse place. It's not like, I don't know, professional sports where you never see a gay person, or it's not like some of the areas of the entertainment industry that are all kind of white middle class. It's actually a very diverse place on the surface. But I think actually when you get down to the roots of it, there is a lot more a similar kind of problem to the gender story. And again, it comes down to who these people are at labels that are doing these big signings, I think, and this vicious cycle of, white men ruling the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So Harriet, what does personal success look like to you, and how has that changed since 10 years ago when you started Secret Sessions?
Yeah, interesting. This is something I think about quite a lot. And I think the way that I've managed to define personal success now is that it's really about a feeling. It's not about any particular one thing. You know, I've been through many rounds of thinking, oh, I'll be happy when we get this, I'll be happy when this venue, I'll be happy when we get this brand deal, and you know, you get all these things and nothing changes. So for me, personal success is about a pursuit of a feeling, and that feeling, I think the closest thing that I can relate it to being is contentedness. And I think part of me always seeking that is because it's not something that comes particularly naturally to me as a kind of type A entrepreneur, business owner, you know, always on the go. I find contentment quite a hard thing to find. So yeah, definitely a feeling of contentness in the work that I'm doing, and of course my home life as well. And I think that contentness comes from adding value to the world, being fairly compensated for the value that I provide, and an element of being recognized for that as well. I think creativity will always play a big part in it. You know, I get a lot of satisfaction from putting things out into the world and them being well received. But yeah, it's definitely not a kind of one thing. And I'm sitting here right now looking at my vision board, and it's got on it, you know, it's got a camper van, it's got a big picture of the sea, there's a mountain. Like, there's definitely a theme of space happening, space and sort of freedom. So yeah, for me, it's all of that, and a feeling of freedom while I'm doing it as well.
I love that. And I know we're very aligned with that, with our love of van life and the sea and other things. And freedom is my driving value as well. And I would love to hear what's freedom to you, or what does it mean to you today, right now?
Yeah, so I think freedom to me is being able to live my life on the terms that I set. I think on a micro level, it's probably not having a boss, not going and sitting in an office and all of those things. But I think on a wider level, it's about having the time to do the things that I think we're put here to do, which is connect with people, spend time with people you love, and see amazing places, and add as much value that you can while you're doing it.
Beautiful. Yes. I love that. Harriet, is there a key takeaway or message from our conversation today that you would like to share with our listeners?
Well, as I was saying that, I thought of something that my dad said to me. I remember we were in Prague and we were sitting in an Airbnb, and I said to him, he was turning 60, so it was his 60th birthday, and I said to him, if you could say one thing to like the younger generation, what would it be? And he kind of sat and he thought for a while. And he's quite a quiet man, my dad, but he sat and he thought for a while, and he just looked at me and he said, only connection. That is the most important thing. And I think the more that I get older, and the more that I try and stop rushing around, and the more that I think it was even you that suggested that I read the 5 Regrets of the Dying.
Yes.
It's so true that the things that we're going to regret are the things that right now we take for granted. So spending time with your family, going for a swim in the sea, it's not the big things that cost lots of money. It's not getting a Tesla. It's having space and time to connect with people.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you. Thanks, your dad.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you enjoyed that book as well, which I couldn't recommend enough. I have recommended it to so many people. I just think it's such a beautiful privilege to be able to read what people who are leaving this life reflect and think about, and to be able to read that when we may have quite a while longer ahead of us. It's amazing. I love it.
Yeah. And it's hard. It is hard. Like, I'm not pretending that any of this is easy to do, because we get so swept up. And, you know, it was only yesterday that I was like pretty much melting down because I felt like I didn't have enough time to do any of the things that people or I thought that I needed to do. But then, you know, today is a different day, and there's been time to swim in the sea and time to have this lovely conversation with you. And I think it's just more of a making sure to check in with those things on a regular basis.
Yes, yeah. And it's interesting you bring up time, because that's something I've personally been working on, and I've been doing work around abundance, and I feel very, very abundant in life. But the one area where I have a bit of scarcity is time. And I've been really working on it because I feel so often there's not enough time. The week's too short. How is it Friday already? What happened? Oh my gosh, I did loads of amazing stuff this week and I'm really happy and proud of it all. But I wanted to do twice as many other things as well. And each day is a flash. And this sense that time is running away from you is such a scarcity mindset. And it's really a choice I think we all have to make about how we use time and how we experience time. And we know that time isn't actually linear, and that we have this warped reality that has been put on us from our education and influences as well. So how do you help yourself to feel more abundant with time and have that time to go for the swim today on this boiling 28-degree day?
I would, I mean, I know how to talk about what I'd like to do and the practices that I'd like to be in place, but I definitely struggle with them. So, you know, I even felt stretched for time going for this swim today, but luckily I have a partner who is, you know, one of those people that is very much about living in the moment and enjoying life. We have a dog, and dogs are very much about living in the moment and enjoying life. Equally, children are the same, and we'll soon be having our first child. And I think I'm very conscious before that happens of really, really mastering the living in the moment and opening up space. I think in terms of like practices, there's some things I often refer back to. I don't know if you've read Mo Gaudat's How to Be Happy. So he was a really high up Google engineer. So I think he was maybe even like a partner in part of Google, like a super wealthy engineer type guy who could program literally anything. And his son, who he was really, really close to, and basically spent a lot of time with, who was a little bit of his spirit guide, I think. His son was 21, and then his son very suddenly died. And Mo decided that he was going to find an algorithm for happiness. So this book is all about this kind of very practical brained type A Google engineer trying to program happiness. And one of the things he talks a lot about is the illusion of time within that. There's a whole chapter on it. And that is something that really sticks by me. And I have some of the quotes from that book saved in my phone. So resources like that I think can be really helpful. Even I have the 5 regrets of the dying on notes in my phone that I refer back to. I do transcendental meditation twice a day, but still it's something that I'm much better at than I was. But it's going to be an ongoing development for the rest of my life, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And yes, it is a lifelong journey. Absolutely, isn't it? And it just really struck me when you mentioned how it's something you're thinking about mastering living in the moment, and how important opening up that space is going to be as you're soon to become a parent, just like me. I think you're 1 or 2 months ahead. And congratulations again. And I think perhaps our children are going to be the gurus we need for this, and to really help us to understand time in a different way. And I've heard from so many women who I look up to and respect that they they can't believe they ever said they didn't have enough time before they became a mother.
Yeah.
And they just think it's ridiculous and hilarious that those words
Yeah.
even came out of their mouth, because you do just have to use time in a different way. So certainly our understanding of time and the way that we use time is about to radically change, and I'm sure our children are going to teach us a lot, and really help us continue that journey about living in the moment as well.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm ready for that lesson.
Yes.
I heard a really beautiful story the other day of a guy, I think he was on Clubhouse, and he was saying that he has basically this friendship bracelet that his little daughter made him that hangs on a little hook by the front door. And every time he comes into the house, he puts the friendship bracelet on. That means he's daddy. And, you know, he's present and he's there and his phone's away. And when he leaves the house, he takes it off and puts it back on the hook. And that means that he's leaving the house to be like professional him. So he almost has these two characters and two approaches. And one of the reasons I thought that was really lovely as well is because I think, you know, some of the kind of characteristics of being like someone that's quite type A, someone that's quite go, someone that's quite productive, are not things that I'd want to lose necessarily. I don't think it's all about becoming this kind of like earth mum that just sits and watches their children all day, because, you know, there are a lot of things that I still want to do, and I want my child to see me working and building a business, but I also want to be here for him as well. And I think it's you know, it's like everything, it's about finding the right balance.
Absolutely.
And being able to be, you know, rounded as a human being and not black and white.
Yeah, and that's such a lovely story. I've heard that more important than how much time you spend with your child or not is how much time you're present with your child. And that's what's important. And so even if it's less time, but you're present in that time, that's what matters.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much. And as we're coming towards the end of our conversation, Harriet, I wanted to ask you about your festival, because it sounds incredible. It's in September. So for our listeners in the UK, it's over my birthday. I definitely want to go and shake my pregnant belly around with your wife's pregnant belly.
Yeah.
But please tell us a little bit more about where we can find the details and how we can join you there.
Yeah, so it's the 2nd to the 5th of September, and it is near Cheshire in an amazing location called Bowlsworth Castle, and it's as epic as it sounds. So this is a festival of music and wellness. So we're partnering with Gymbox, and we'll be bringing a program of you know, all the things that Gymbox do, like HIIT and things like that. But we've also got, you know, lots and lots of wellness practitioners from, God, who did I see the other day? There's like cold water, Wim Hof style people. There's water immersed meditation. There's also wakeboarding. You know, there's a lake on site. There is a castle. There's an all-night rave. So it's just going to be this well-rounded festival of connection. Not massive, 4,000 people capacity, very family friendly. So yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be the return of live music and the return of secret sessions all at once.
Sounds absolutely amazing.
Oh, and if you do want to hear about it, sorry.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Where do we find it?
God, I'm terrible at my own PR. Secret sessions with an s.co.uk.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I once went to a festival in a castle in Wales, and it was absolutely amazing. It definitely sounds epic, and I can't wait to see you there. And where can we find you and your work online in general?
You can find me at Harriet JW on Instagram. So 2 R's, 1 T, JW.
Okay, perfect. And do you have another book that you would recommend? You've mentioned How to Be Happy and the Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, but is there any other book that has impacted you recently that you'd like to share?
What other books I've read recently? So a friend of mine from Margate released a book called Period Power, Maisie Hill, and it's all about mastering your cycle, which is, if you can do that, it's a powerful tool. And I'm sure this is something that you've covered in this podcast because it feels very up your street, but using your hormones to kind of master your productivity, creativity, and life in general. And Period Power, I think, is really the best book that I've read that goes into why to do this and how to do it, and just shows you a little bit more about what's happening in your body, which we certainly don't get taught young enough.
We don't.
But better late than never.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. What's her name? The book's Period Power and the author's
name? Maisie Hill.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, I actually would love to speak to her. I don't know at all enough about that. It was 9 months before I became pregnant, that I went off hormonal contraception. And I had literally been on hormonal contraception since I was 16 when I started my period. And I realized more and more in recent years that I'm in my 30s and I have no idea what my cycle is like. I have no idea how to be in tune with it. And that's a huge part of being a woman. And so I went off the coil last summer and started using natural cycles and tracking my temperature. And it was just mind-blowing to see that 6 weeks after removing the coil device, there I was, cycle was there and everything was just working. But then I got pregnant. So
amazing.
Natural cycles didn't quite work for me. But of course, this is how it's meant to be. And me and my husband are super grateful. But it was, a surprise. So I still haven't really learned about my cycle yet. But plenty more time to learn more about it. That's so true. We don't learn anything about how to use our cycle to our advantage. And I've met women who run their businesses based on their cycle, who run their family and social life based on it, and who really know how to be in flow with it rather than trying to stomp it out, pretend it's not there, be ashamed of it, and all those things we're taught at school. Hide your tampon, don't let anyone see. Imagine if you went on a date and a boy knew you were on your period, these ridiculous things. So really, really important topic. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of your time today, Harriet. I've loved speaking with you as always.
Thanks for having me. It's been great. And I look forward to dancing in a field with your pregnant belly.
Me too. Take care and enjoy the rest of this scorching day.
All right. See you later.
Bye. I hope you enjoyed this episode with the lovely Harriet. I really loved how she frames the need for time and experience for you to be able to discover what your mission in life is. When we have a period of feeling lost and unsure of our purpose, it can be easy to want the answers straight away. But when we understand that it is in fact our journey that will reveal our purpose, we can embrace where we are now and trust where it's leading us. Our purpose will then evolve with us as our experience grows and our focus in life evolves. Harriet told us about her approach to working with female identifying artists and how she brings together both mindset work and the practicalities of the music business and releases, which very much aligns with my approach to facilitating lasting change through both internal and external work and growth. When we combine both sides, we set ourselves up to create, grow, and deal with the success we are capable of. If we have our internal and external development siloed, our goals and approaches can contradict each other and we can lack the strength we need to move forward. I love Harriet's openness around how she feels about time, feeling that we always need more, and how she is personally working on this. Something I share that I've experienced myself. Feeling pressured for time is down to our own mindset and not our workload or the clock. Studies have found that the more we focus on our passions, the less time stressed we feel. Another thing we can do is to look at how we valued our time. Time pressure can be more about the gap between how we're spending our time and how we want to be spending our time, rather than actually not having enough of it. What do you think? What might apply to you?
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe now. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star rating and short review. If you think people you know might benefit from listening to Going Conscious, please share it with them. I know I get much of my inspiration from podcasts which are shared with me. For all episodes, our library and more, visit goingconscious.com. Your support to spread this positive message of fulfillment and freedom means so much. As well as hosting Going Conscious, I help conscious entrepreneurs to transition and unleash their power and purpose with my transformation coaching and conscious brand consulting work. Discover more on Instagram at Nikki Trott or on my website, nikkitrott.com. I'd love to hear from you and to talk about your goals, questions, or how we can work together. And if I don't hear from you before then, see you next Wednesday on the next episode of Going